If you're joining us for our 12 o'clock session with AJ Juliani, we'll be starting here in about 30 seconds. If you've been with us, fine, we already know who you are and where you're from, but if you're just joining us, please go to the chat room and tell us who you are, your role, and where you are. And I'm so excited to welcome you to a session by AJ Juliani. AJ is a Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestselling author of Adaptable, and I'm about halfway through it. I highly recommend you read his book. He serves as faculty for the University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education, and he's formerly the Director of Learning and Innovation for Centennial School District. As a curriculum coordinator, tech director, English teacher, football coach, and K-12 instructional coach, AJ has worked towards innovative learning experiences for schools in various roles. He's also an award-winning blogger, speaker, and author of multiple other books, including the bestsellers Empower, Launch, and the PBL Playbook. You are in for a real treat, and I'm going to turn it over to you, AJ.
Thanks so much for having me here, Cindy, and everyone. I'm excited to just follow up Jay's fantastic presentation there. I've heard Jay speak a number of times, and he shares things so succinctly. I'm hoping to take what he has just kind of broken down, performance tasks, project-based learning, and answer this question that you see on the screen right here, which is, how do we turn any existing unit that we have into a project-based learning experience? Many of us don't have the curriculum where PBL is already in it, or there's performance tests everywhere. So what are some actual steps? I'm going to be breaking down 5 steps to go through what that looks like. So I love seeing the chat right there. I love seeing how where everybody's from. People are from all over the place. I am from Philadelphia, right outside of Philadelphia. I am a huge Eagles, Sixers, Flyers, Phillies fan over here. So if you would, in the chat, share what teams you are cheering for. That just may be your second graders, lacrosse team. That may be, and if you're not someone who's into sports or watching and cheering for teams, let me know what activities you're doing right now outside of just the general learning for school and those different types of things. I love seeing this here. Bills, Dodgers, Braves. All right, Diane, you and I are on the same page as well. I like seeing lots of different people sharing what this looks like over here. We got Vikings fans. See, that was the only one I had a problem with, was Cowboys fans. You know, as a Philadelphia person, we have issues with that as much as possible. But I wanted to just check in and see how everybody's doing. If we were in person right now, right? If we were in person, I think one of the things that I would be doing is walking around, seeing how everybody's feeling, right? Getting a sense of the room in the middle of, April right now, how we are feeling about the school year and everything else that's going on. And so what I like doing right now is just doing a quick check-in. We do these SEL check-ins with kids all the time, and I do it to start any type of faculty meeting I'm in, any of those types of things. On a scale, all right, on a scale of Joel Embiid, who just hit a game-winning shot last night for the Sixers against the Raptors, let me know how you're feeling and maybe a reason why. I see some threes because it's around lunchtime right here, so people are probably eating a little bit while we're on this. Let me know a reason why, how you're feeling some of these. Hopefully we have no 5s over here with people saying bye. Hopefully we don't have any 6s over here. We're hoping to get everybody in a good spot as we're going through this process. And I'm excited to be working with all of you today for the next hour, kind of really just breaking down some of those steps that we're going to be talking about in terms of, moving towards a project-based learning experience. I do always want to say when I'm talking to educators, thank you. I really think over the past couple of years, what a lot of us in education already knew came to the forefront. And as someone who's a dad to kids that are in school right now, I honestly almost want to say thank you like this now, right? I feel like so emotional when I'm talking to educators that I want to say thank you. This is how I feel right now. So if you see an educator, whether it's a teacher of your own kids, a colleague, or anything, tell them thank you for everything they've been doing over the past couple of years, and especially this year as it was supposed to be normal and it's not, and it's really kind of impacted all of us. I don't know if you remember the start of the pandemic, right? How many of you remember the start of the pandemic where for a good month or two, teachers were legitimate heroes. We were on the top of everybody's list of what they're doing. You all remember that the first couple months? I'm talking April, May, maybe. All right, we were feeling like that. And this video, one of my colleagues shared this video with me and said, and I still have the text message, said, I wonder if we're heading in this direction. I wonder if we're heading in this direction as educators. And so I want to play this video because I'm telling you, in April, May of 2020, I thought maybe we're heading this direction where people are going to be as fanatic about education as they are about sports. This, I thought, could have been the future. Just give me a little thumbs up and let me know you can hear the sound. Headed into that direction as Key and Peele put that down as much as possible. That all changed, right? That all changed last year. And I think for many of us in education, we're kind of all on this same, idea right now. We just want to take a nap. We just need a little bit of a break here. We just want to take a nap right here if we can, as much as possible. But even in the craziness, right? Even in the craziness of everything that has happened, I have talked with so many educators. I have family members who are educators that have stuck it out, that are here. If you're on this webinar right now, you're still doing the good work of educating our kids. And it's because many of us just knew our compelling reason, right? We knew the reason why we're still doing this work. And I'm always connected with this Sane Bell, reason, this why. And I just think she puts it so perfectly that it doesn't matter a kid's background, socioeconomic, where they come from, any type of situation that is going on in the world, students should have a rich, relevant, authentic learning experience. And that to me is the reason, the compelling reason. And as somebody who's been a teacher, a middle school teacher, a high school teacher, a K-5 instructional coach, a K-12, curriculum coordinator, director of learning, all those different types of things, this really hit me as a dad, especially over the pandemic. When I started out the pandemic, I had 4 kids. You can see 4 of my kids right there. And then 1 pandemic baby later, we are now 5 kids deep in our family. We got to start in 5. All right, we got to start in 5 to put it out there. But one of the things that I have seen with my own kids, right, is that, and I got to see this because we were home and seeing them learn online and all that kind of stuff, is that they all need different things to be successful. And they are in the same family, right? All these kids, I have 4 school-age kids. I have a 7th grader, a 4th grader, a 2nd grader, and a kindergartner, and then the baby. So I have 4 school-age kids. Every single one of them needs something different from their schooling experience to be successful. My daughter, she loves school. She loves the social aspect. She needs to connect with her teachers and her peers and be a part of that social experience. My son, all the way over to the right, is just a menace to society. He is crazy. He has sensory processing disorder and he's so lovable, but he just needs that redirection, that help, that teacher who is going to consistently, prop him up and giving him that positive feedback, right? And then you see my middle one right there. He's like me. He just loves sports and he needs that extracurricular. He needs those times to get outside and move. And I say this because each of our kids learn and are motivated by different things. They're not one size fits all. So when we think about the reasons that Jay so articulately laid out for moving towards performance tasks and project-based learning and that deeper learning, this is one of the main reasons. If we want to reach every kid, if we understand that not every kid's the same, we have to do learning that looks like project-based learning, because our world has been changing, right? And I see this as a dad and my kids going through school, but it really, to me, came to fruition when my daughter goes, "Hey, Dad, can you tell me," and this was middle of the pandemic, we were watching a lot of Netflix. I put the subtitles on so they could at least read a little bit. And my daughter goes, "Can you tell me about that store that you guys used to go to, the place where you used to get your movies and stuff, called Blockbuster?" And I realized that my daughter, who's 13 years old, never experienced what it was like to go to Blockbuster on Friday night. How many of you in the audience right here still have a Blockbuster card? Anybody at least used to have a Blockbuster card, right? Anybody who was a gold or platinum member maybe is still holding on to that Blockbuster card. I couldn't explain Blockbuster to my daughter, and so I pulled up this quick video from The Onion, right? I pulled this quick video, and I just want you to watch the first minute of it. And think about, even though everything has changed in the pandemic, what I realize is that educators, we are always dealing with change. We are always overcoming and adapting and being flexible. In fact, one of the most best parts about being an educator is that we are flexible and adaptable and we change with the times. Think about how much has changed in education since this was the reality of Blockbuster on a Friday night.
A new tourist destination in Auburn Hills, Michigan is showing visitors the difficulties life held for Americans in the past. Blockbuster Video aims to transport visitors to a time before the internet. It's an historically authentic recreation of a video store, a specialty shop where customers exchanged money for the short-term use of videos in an archaic system called renting.
The tour is amazing. It's like stepping into a time machine. It's hard to believe that people live this way.
A historical research team spent 3 years making sure every last detail was accurate, from the signs used to promote the store's merchandise to the costumes worn by the store's employees, historical performers who make history come alive for tour groups twice an hour.
My character is based on an actual Blockbuster employee named Jerome, who worked there from May of 1999 to June 2000. My main responsibilities are to man the cash register and to put the movies from the return slot back onto the shelves.
I am a Blockbuster customer named Kathy. 2 times a week, I travel 6 miles to rent and return videos. Oh, look, we're in the comedy section. What's so poignant about this time is the uncertainty. When you get to the Blockbuster, are they going to have your video? Did someone else rent it? Is there going to be a line? Are the alarms going to sound when you walk out the front door? It was very difficult for the people that lived during this era.
Hey, very difficult for people that lived during this era. Right? Very difficult, the uncertainty of living in this era. And as you think about that, right, you think about how much has changed. And now we have Netflix losing shares and people unsubscribing. We realize that this quote that I think many of us have seen, and I remember seeing this at a professional development and thinking, that quote is hogwash. We're currently preparing students for jobs that don't even exist. I'm thinking to myself, there's still going to be doctors and lawyers and teachers and engineers and plumbers. And I'm thinking all these things. But what I realized as I have continued to teach and see kids move on to careers is that very much this is true. We are seeing that most people are doing a job now that did not exist when we were in school. Teachers, all of us included, using technologies like Zoom right now that were not around when we were in school to solve a problem, what we just did teaching and learning in the middle of the pandemic, that we did not know would impact all of us. And so these changes have impacted students. We have seen that students' engagement level has been dropping every single year kids are in school. And this was a pre-pandemic study of 1 million students surveyed. And not only that, we have seen that in school, students are basically saying, hey, blue is in the last 7 days, I've learned something interesting. That drops as kids get older. Green is I have fun at school. That drops as it gets older. Red is at the school, I get to do what I do best every day. That drops as kids get older. And so it's impacting our students, right? This changing world of having on-demand access to information and then looking different at school. It's also impacting teachers, right? We have seen, and you have all seen this, that teachers are leaving the profession at the highest rate ever. And even before the pandemic, from 2009 to 2014, the percentage of college students going to education was dropping, and it has even continued to drop more and more over the past 5 years from 2014 to 2019 of what we have data from. In the midst of that, our world wants go-getters. And so if we're preparing students for something to go out and be a member of society in this world, and we see that the Outlook survey from the Fortune 500 companies and small business owners of America are saying, here's the things that we want. We want kids that are problem solvers. We want kids that can work in a team. We want kids that have communication skills, leadership, those different types of things. We are seeing that the world wants decision makers, designers, and creators. And so our job, and this is really the crux of what I'm going to be talking about over the rest of the presentation, is that our job is not necessarily prepare kids for something. For a long time, I taught 8th grade. I can't tell you how many times I told my 8th graders, oh, just see what happens when you get to high school. All right, let's just see what happens when we get you to high school. Or I taught, high school seniors, and I was saying all the time, we're doing this to prepare you for college and career. We're going to get you ready. My daughter who's in second grade, they're saying, hey, we're going to get you ready for third grade. We always kind of say this, but we don't really know what the future is going to hold. We don't really know what that's going to look like. Our job really is to help kids learn to prepare themselves. That is the role of educators, parents, and everyone else who's working with kids, is to put them in situations where they learn to prepare themselves for anything down the line. Now, it's easy to say and make a nice little fancy slide right there. It's a lot harder to do without feeling like this, like you're hanging on by a thread every single day working with kids. But I often think we overthink what this looks like, right? So a lot of times we're like this kid right here, just overthinking a little bit how we can do this. We're just hanging on for a little bit, overthinking how hard it's going to be. And we just need to stand up and get our bearings and figure this out. And so I will boil down what this looks like to do that in one slide here, which is when we give students, any type of learner, adult learners, when we give them choice, that leads to ownership. And when they have ownership, that leads to empowerment. And empowerment leads to deeper learning. If you just think about that process and what we're doing, and you ask the question, what decisions am I making for my learners that they can make for themselves, it really starts to change what that looks like. And in our book, Empower, John Spencer and I took these two quotes from Bill Ferreter, who I think sums it up perfectly. He says, engaging students means getting kids excited about our content, our curriculum, the things that we have to teach, our standards, right? When we're trying to engage students, we're getting learners excited for the learning journey, right? We're getting them excited for the ride. But empowering our students means giving kids the skills and knowledge to pursue their passions, their interests, their future. That's really, when we think about our compelling reason and why we're in education, it is this. It's not just engaging, it's this. Empowered learners create their own ride, right? They're going for their own ride. And so I'm going to break down 5 steps of how we can actually walk through what we currently have in our curriculum and walk through and say, all right, here's 5 steps to take what we have and turn it into a project-based learning experience that is engaging and empowering. All right. That is really focused on engaging and empowering our learners. And so step 1 is a little bit different step than a lot of people talk when we're talking about doing curriculum work or changing our units to project-based learning. Step 1 is not starting with the standards. We will get there, but it doesn't matter how many standards you list in your curriculum unit, how many standards you have in your lesson plans, if kids aren't paying attention. Right? It doesn't matter how many standards we hit or cover or whatever terminology you want to use unless kids are paying attention. And the same thing goes for adults, right? So our step 1 is start with a reason for learning, a problem, a challenge, something, inquiry, something that gets them curious, something that gets them excited and paying attention about learning. When we look at how people learn, that process for learning can't start until people have attention, right? It can't start until people have attention. And so why wouldn't we focus exactly what that looks like, right? Exactly what that looks like. Then after we have attention, there's encoding, there's storage, there's retrieval. That brings us back to attention as we go through that process. Phil Schlechte, who ran the Schlechte Center for Engagement for years and did all kinds of research on engagement, he basically broke down what this looks like, right? And he said, engagement is 2 things. It's high attention and high commitment. And when we look at how people learn, that matches up. It's the high attention, and then those other pieces are the commitment there. What happens a lot of times in schools, right? And what happened a lot of time in my classroom, I would say the first, my first 3 to 5 years, my classroom looked like this. I had strategic compliance and ritual compliance, which I had students doing the work because of the grades associated to the work, or I had students doing the work because of the carrots and sticks, or for the ritual compliance students, they were just going through the motions because they didn't want to be bothered, and this is what you do at school. I mean, 80% of what Schlechte's work said, 80 to 85% of students at school are in one of these 2 levels, strategic compliance or ritual compliance. And when we shifted and we went to Zoom and online learning during the pandemic, what we found is that a lot of these students who were showing up to class every day, going through the motions every day, were not doing the same things online. They were not showing up to our Zooms. They were not participating in the Zooms. They were not going through their process because a lot of those carrots and sticks had been removed. And this is why those reasons are so important. John Spencer and I talk about these reasons in both our book, Launch and Empower. And here's some of the ones we break down that are really good ones to get started with. When you're thinking about shifting to project-based learning, here's a couple reasons. A problem to solve, right? People and human beings love solving problems. What would be a unique problem for individuals or the whole class to solve? Creating a physical product, right? What would that look like? You're building and making something. Creating a digital product, the same type of thing, a game, a website, an app, those different types of things. Using a natural phenomenon. At my school district at Wissahickon, we got hit by Hurricane Sandy, and the power went out for about a week. And one of our fifth graders, for his science fair project, had done a solar powered charging device. And he was like a neighborhood hero because he was able to charge his cell phone, his iPhone, when no one else could. When the kids came back to school, one of our teachers heard about this, and the kids all wanted to do this in their science class. And so they went forward and they created solar powered charging devices. That was a natural phenomenon leading to an authentic project-based opportunity where kids were excited and paying attention. Or what about awareness of an issue? Things that are going on in your community or around the world that kids want to learn more about and dive into. Or it could be geeky interests. We do this in Genius Hour that I'll talk about here in just a second. Or it could be empathy, right? You could start from that place of empathy, putting yourself in other people's shoes. One of the projects that we did when I was teaching 10th and 11th grade English class was we had kids do this project, Global Inform, that they helped create, doing something about human rights. We had started off a couple years prior of having kids learn about human rights issues. We had read Night by Elie Wiesel, and they wrote a letter and sent it to Congress and different types of people. It got to the place after 2 years of kids and teachers collaborating where they were using multimedia and social media to create awareness campaigns of what that looked like, right? Of what that looked like. And so that was the interested, piece of what this looks like, is that kids can bring that attention too. They know the things that they're interested in when you bring them part of the process. So step two, now that we've talked about getting a reason for learning, if we've got that, right? If we've got a reason for learning, then we can focus on what students are going to learn. Here's where the knowledge, the skills, the standards hit. And a lot of times when you start with the reason, they start to fall into place. And I'll give you an example. When I did a Genius Hour, a 20% time project with my students, basically what we were doing was taking our nonfiction reading unit and giving students 20% of class time, that marking period, to learn whatever they were interested about, right? So they had to use this time to learn and make and document their process. So instead of me telling them what nonfiction articles to read, they were going out and searching and watching videos and reading articles, reading, writing, thinking, learning, listening, all those different types of things that connect to the ELA standards. And as they were going through that process, once they realized this is what I want to learn about, this is what I want to make or create, then they presented, so add that presentation, the speaking standards into it to the rest of their group, saying, this is what this looks like, right? This is what this looks like in terms of where I'm going to go with this. And they did a Shark Tank pitch. Then they went through that learning process. They're learning in all different types of ways, talking to mentors, researching, all those different types of things. And they documented their journey. Some kids blogged, some kids created a podcast, some kids created a vlog of what that looks like. And their peers commented on the learning journey. That's when they started making and developing the things that were based on what they were learning. Then they practiced and they had a presentation. Every kid did about a 3-minute TED Talk where they shared the learning journey, the wins, the fails, all that type of stuff. But throughout this process, they were hitting all kinds of standards, right? So we had the reason for learning, which was geeky interest, the Genius Hour 20% time, but they were hitting all types of research standards. They were hitting all types of standards around inquiry and text evidence. They were hitting standards around writing, presenting, and creating throughout that entire project-based learning experience. They were even hitting some mathematical standards in my English class of constructing, critiquing, and modeling. They were hitting all of the national education technology standards from ISTE, and they were hitting those big, C's, those big needed skills. I don't call them 21st century because I'm pretty sure Aristotle was doing these: communication, collaboration, critical thinking. They were hitting those skills as well. And so now you've got students that are not only creating something, right, but kids that are going through the process and actually learning through the creating and making. And so we get to step 3. And step 3 is the big one that I think teachers have to talk about, and administrators and everybody, is what will students make or create or do? Who are they creating for, and what does that look like? And so I wanted you to share some examples now of what that looks like in your school. What was the most engaging lesson, engaging project-based experience, engaging performance tasks that you either did as a teacher or you saw and saw as an administrator? I just want you to put in the chat, what were some really engaging lessons that you've seen last year or this year, and what did that look like? Because a lot of times, and I'll keep this up here for a second while I break down some of the things that people talk about. A lot of times we get questions about how we possibly could do this, right? We get questions all the time. Okay, that's great. We can start with the reason for learning and we can hit the standards. But what about all the stuff that we have to do, right? What about all the stuff that we have to do? And so people say, hey, what about the time constraints, right? What about the time constraints? It's going to take too long. What about the curriculum map? How are we going to cover what's in the curriculum map, and what about the test, right? What that's going to look like. And so I'd love for you to just share in the chat right now, as I'm breaking down some of the answers to these reasons here, some of the things that you've seen at your school, because we all have these 3 questions. What about time constraints? What about the curriculum map? And what about the test? And these 3 questions basically say the same thing: is what about just doing it the way that we've always done it? Right? How are we possibly going to do it in a new way when we didn't even have enough time to do it this way? You can see from the chat right now, though, there's tons of schools all over the place that are doing this. And maybe it's not happening in every classroom. And maybe the classrooms that it is happening in, it's not happening in every unit, but it is happening. It's happening in all different types of school communities, all different types of student background and makeup, all different types of age levels here, right? What does that look like? And you can see in the chat right there. And so a lot of times I ask the question of people and I say, can you give me the research that says the way we are doing traditional learning works? Because I get asked all the time, hey, can you give me the research for project-based learning? And boy, do we have the research to support project-based learning. I like flipping around and saying, can you give me the research that shows that traditional learning process, that tests and quizzes and those types of things work? Here is what some of the research is right there. I will put a link on the chat as well. And I'm gonna have all these slides for you as well to get there, right? But I wanna break down what the research says really quickly, right? Just really quickly what this looks like. First, I wanna start at the elementary level, and there's a pretty cool study that was just recently done that shares a little bit of the benefits of project-based learning.
In the US, we have a persistent gap in the achievement of kids who live in poverty and kids in wealthy communities.
What's this over here?
Project-based learning is a very powerful tool to connect students with their communities, with real purposes and audiences, and it does appear to be an effective way of improving student achievement.
My name is Annalisa Halverson, and along with Nell Duke, we designed curricula that integrated literacy and social studies using project-based learning.
Project PLACE stands for Project Approach to Literacy and Civic Engagement. We designed 4 big projects. We aligned the units around the literacy standards and social studies standards for 2nd grade. Then we commenced a fairly large study to test the impact in high poverty, low performing school districts. Our study was with 48 different classrooms in 20 elementary schools.
Half of them were assigned to teach the projects that we designed, and half of them were asked to teach the regular social studies curriculum.
So I'm going to fast forward a little bit and just show you some of the results here. This is a great video that you can find on Edutopia. It'll also be in my slides that you're going to get. I'm going to show you what this looks like here. Check this out. Studies. That was a more recent one, but there's been a ton of studies that have showed over the years the outcomes, right? So this is a study that showed the positive social outcomes for students with and without disabilities when they're doing project-based learning. There's another study that looked at the individual attention that teachers were able to give students when they were going through this process. There's another study that talked about increasing student engagement and strategies used by students. Another study that talked about academic performance, attention from teachers, improved class communities. There's also educators that benefit from the co-planning that project-based learning has, and all different types of teacher studies of enjoying the workplace and the work that they're doing. It makes it easier to conduct hands-on activities and provides flexible assessment situations as well. The research is there. One of the most exciting pieces of research was done by Harvard University, and what it said makes a lot of sense to me, is that kids oftentimes think that they learn more in lecture-oriented classrooms, but they actually learn a whole lot more in the active learning classrooms. Even though the perception is different, the results in the active learning, the project-based learning, is so more of what that looks like. And I was just set up there by Christine for my next slides of what that looks like as well. All right. So what does this look like? Thank you, Christine, for setting me up there as well as we're going through what this looks like. So as we look at K through 5, there's lots of different ways to do this. And I could do an entire presentation just on K through 2, just on 3 through 5 of what that looks like. And you can always reach out to me at any point in time at ajjuliani@gmail.com or my website, ajjuliani.com. I have tons of resources up there, but I also can kind of share you more specific things about, whether it be K2 through 2 or those different types of things. When you look at K through 2, here's some of the things and 10 projects that we have done in my school in the past couple of years here. Every single one of these hits multiple standards and multiple different things. For example, for a math one, since you just brought that up, I would talk about this Better Playground project. So the kids actually use their math and geometry that they're learning to design a better playground using shapes and designing and building that out. They then write a little persuasive piece or talk a little persuasive piece about why their playground is better than the current one at the school. And they present to class, the teacher, and ultimately they vote and share and present a couple of them to the school board or the principal as well. And so it really gives them that authentic kind of next level using the math of what that looks like. And this could be something as simple as, the box project, right? What can you create with the cardboard box? Hits all kinds of standards as people are going through what that looks like. And if you look at this one as well for 3 through 5, one of the ones that we did in the middle of the pandemic was the dream vacation, because everybody was thinking about getting away and doing something. And so we gave kids $15,000 budget to plan a dream vacation, and it was cross-curricular, right? They had to do research, allocate resources, calculate the cost, learn about the climates and the geography and the history of the areas that they're going to, and it hit all different types of elements as they're going through that process. There's all different types of ones that we've done with our kids. There are a ton on defined learning as well. And I have a lot of resources as well on my website of different types of projects like these that you can check out that gets kids excited about the learning. I would say when we move to the 6th through 12th and more subject specific, there is many different ones of what this looks like here, right? And so there's, I just shared a Genius Hour project in the LA. There's Wonder Day research projects. One of the ones that our kids like doing is like a press release of the book that they're reading. Another one that they really enjoyed was taking viral videos and being a marketing manager and talking about how they can get a better deal on their YouTube advertisements through the different types of videos that they're doing and supporting with research from other videos. Kids had so much fun with this. It's something that they're already doing, they're already interested in, and connects really well with the learning. For social studies, there's all different types of ways to do this, whether it's documentary projects, history-themed blogs. One of my favorite ones, a teacher in Chicago took his just basic end of the unit test and he got rid of it. He realized that his kids had no retention of the test. They just crammed. And when he taught a lot of them the next year, they forgot what was on the test. Even if they got an A, they didn't have a real good understanding or remembering of the major cause and effects that were happening in his world civ class. And so he gave them a task where they were going to create a 2-minute history of the world based on the major cause and effects events that they thought of what that looks like. And the reason I like sharing this video is because these kids put a lot of time and effort into this video. You can tell that they were double dipping in their digital media class, and the teacher talks about that as well, which is awesome to see the connection between digital media and music and art and history, but also because at the end of the unit, when the kids all shared these videos and presentations on the history of the world in 2 minutes or less, the teacher then had a roundtable reflection where they talked about the bias that they saw in each other's videos. Because the ultimate goal of this class was that history has a bias depending on who's telling the story. And so in this video, you're going to see that there's a bunch of bias based on what the kids chose to put in and how they chose to put it in. And he said that there was so much just conversation around this video in particular about the bias and what they left out and those different types of things. So I want you to watch this video real quick, the history of the world, or 2 minutes or less, and think about how this type of learning can impact students. Link to this video in the presentation that we share out. I just think about all the learning that happened when they were making it, but even more so after the fact. And so when you really think about that project-based approach, it's the process where the learning's happening, not the final product. And it's after the final product where even more learning, the reflection, the metacognitive piece of what that looks like there. This can happen in math classrooms as well. Having kids making and creating a board game. These are all things that kids have done in our district here. One of the ones that kids really liked was doing the Spotify song math project learning about fractions and division. And it just took about 2 to 5 days, but they were using real data on Spotify for their favorite artists to practice multiplying by fractions, multi-digit division, generating patterns. And then as money managers, had to determine how much money they were giving each artist for the streams that they were getting through the process. So much that was going into it. Our older kids really liked this project, where it was the Game of Life financial literacy project. What is it really like to earn and manage your own money? And going through that with a math lens was really powerful. In science, there's so many different ways to do this as well. Some of the Mythbuster projects we've done have been really exciting. And I like, just sharing some of these ones up here, because when you take something like learning about Ebola, especially when COVID was going on, or you take them learning about the environment as a grassroots project, you're taking things that they have to learn in school anyway and giving them that relevance and meaningful connection that they need. This can happen in every subject area, right? In health, we had our kids designing a quarantine sport, right? Or designing a sport to play 6 feet apart. We had kids creating a fitness campaign that you could do from quarantine. We had, art classes creating a magazine that could be shared digitally. There's so many different ways you could do this. And every single one of these project ideas could be done in person, they could be done online, or they could be done in blended hybrid types and situations. And so as we think about kind of the future and the next steps, that's a really big key. So step 4 is a really important one, because, all right, we've got kids making, creating, we've got their attention. Well, now we got to scaffold the learning experience. We have to have a structure as they're going through that process, because a lot of times when we do project-based learning, it looks like this, right? There's one person that does 99% of the work. There's another person who doesn't know what's going on. There's another person who's going to help, another person who disappears, they come back. It's craziness as we go through a lot of that. And so as teachers, we have to be the ones who are the guides on the ride, right? On the side, we are giving them and kind of going through that journey, giving them a plan, calling them to action, giving them a plan, calling them to action, helping them along the way. And so we have to choose a structure and stick with it. And there's lots of different structures of what this looks like, right? We could start with the inquiry process. I've done this many times, especially when I was doing English language arts and going through the inquiry process. We could do design thinking. I'm a big proponent of design thinking. This is the IDEO design thinking phases. This is the Stanford D School one. This is the one that John Spencer and I created for our book launch, where you have kids going through the process, where they start with empathy, look, listen, and learn. Then they start asking questions and brainstorming. Then they understand the process or problem they're trying to solve. Then they start navigating those ideas, creating a prototype, fixing it after getting some feedback, and launching it to an audience. When you use a process like this, it scaffolds what the learning should be like, right? So once you choose a process like this, you're allowed to have check-ins and benchmarks, because there's different spots along the project where they can do that. And so you're having kids, hey, writing down, all right, this is my end goal. Much like understanding by design, as Jay was talking about, here's my end goal for the project. We're going to create a new way for kids to recycle in the cafeteria. And we're going to make it like a basketball hoop where it counts points like at the arcade. That's step 6, right? Well, then what is step 5? What is step 4, step 3, step 2, and backwards plan what that looks like. That then allows teachers, after they have these action steps, to conference with students. And throughout that project-based learning experience, now I can conference with the kid and say, hey, it looks like you're at step 4 right now. How is this going? And have a conversation where we're both on the same page, because it's often hard to manage all the different type of projects that are going through if you don't have a game plan of what each kid is doing. And kids also can then self-manage and be self-starters in a much better way than if they just had kind of an open-ended, here we go, that type of thing. So step 5 is, after we have given them a reason for learning, we've connected it to the standards, they're creating and making something, we're scaffolding the process. Well, what is the assessment, the revision, the reflecting, the revising? What does that look like? How do we assess the learning and the process, and not just the final product, right? And so for this, I talk about how our goal should not be perfection, because when we have that goal as perfection with our kids, the result is often failure. When the goal is iteration and improving, the process is failing, and kids get better at what they're going through. And so that's really what we want to let them know, that you're not going to have something perfect at the end of this. In fact, we might not even spend a lot of time assessing the final product. We really want to assess the process as you're going through what that looks like. And in order for them to understand this, we played the skateboard video for them. And you're all going to have access to the skateboard video. I want them to think about learning and project-based learning like this skateboard video. I was a skater back in the day when I had hair and I had long Jinko jeans and a chain and a Stussy hat and a No Fear shirt. I was a big time skater back in the day. When you're a part of a skating community, you try stuff like this that you know you're not going to get right on the first time. And you document the process. And your entire friend group and people that are there, your community, you see why I had to mute this because he's cursing left and right there. But your entire friend group and community are cheering you on, saying, you got this. They're helping you out. We're there supporting you, knowing that you're not going to get it on the first time, but that each time you're getting a little bit better as you go through this process. And so project-based learning is a lot like this. You're going to have ideas, you're going to try stuff, you're going to do this, it's not going to work, you're going to have to rethink about it, you're going to get feedback from your peers, you're going to get feedback from your group, from your teacher, and each time you get that feedback, you're going to get a little bit better, right? A little bit better as you're going through that process. And so if he had stopped on the 4th time or 5th time or 6th time, he wouldn't get it. But right here on the 17th time, he's like, you know what? I figured it out. I figured it out. And the 17th time, he figures it out. On the 18th time, he finally lands it. And so we tell our students and our teachers as well that if they want to have a moment like this in learning, where they've gone through that process and they're, riding off in the sunset in some weird alleyway in California, if they want to have a moment like that, they're going to have to fail and go throughout that process of iteration, right? And so as teachers, here are some of the tools of what this looks like. We use the GRIT rubric all the time. You can search this up on Google, but it'll also be listed on my website. The GRIT rubric is a process-oriented rubric. G stands for guts, R for resiliency, I for integrity, T for tenacity. And the kids self-assess themselves as they're going through project-based learning, and you have conferences with the teachers as you're going through that place. When you're doing something like that, you're then, as a teacher, having consistent times where you're calling them to action and giving them help and a plan as they're going through the learning, instead of just waiting towards the end of the day when their final product is done at the end of the unit to give them feedback as they're going through that process. And when teachers give feedback, it allows kids to have so much more early success than if they're not giving them feedback. Take, for example, Darren Harper being a coach, being a teacher, giving a guide like a feedback to his daughter trying a skateboarding trick.
Oh, that was good. Now, if you do it like that, that's it. That's it.
It's a beautiful thing to see a guide in action working with someone, and you have a lot more ability to improve when you have that. In fact, as I'm kind of wrapping up here, a team of psychologists did this whole study and basically said that great feedback can completely change the learning process. Whatever type of feedback you're doing, if you can couch it with this one magical phrase, it led to a 40% increase among white students, a 320% boost among Black students. Just one phrase that you can add to any type of feedback you're giving students, and it's this: I'm giving you these comments because I have very high expectations and I know that you can reach them. And if we think about that process, if we think about how much of an impact that one statement can make, we realize that as teachers, we have a huge impact on our students' lives because we're the ones giving that comment. We're the ones that are sharing that feedback. And the students are taking that feedback as a relationship builder because it's from someone who believes in them. It's someone who knows that they can be successful. It's someone who's holding them to a high standard and saying, I know you can get there. I'm going to be here with you along the process. Now, you really can't give that feedback if you're taking a multiple choice test. You really can't give that feedback if you're just watching a PowerPoint and kids are taking notes. That feedback really can't be given unless the kids are making, creating, designing, doing, and building like they do in project-based learning. And so I would share this as we're ending our session here, that you're going to get lots of ideas today. I hope that you got lots of ideas just from the chat. It was amazing right there. And sometimes right now, we want to do a million different things. But I would say, what's just one thing? After today, after the sessions, what's one thing you might increase? And what's one thing you might create? And if you're going to be increasing and doing something more, or you're going to be doing something new for the first time, you probably want to take something off your plate. Because of everything we talked about at the beginning of this presentation, it is a crazy time to be an educator. You might want to eliminate something, you might want to reduce something to kind of even up the priorities on your plate to be able to do something new. I say this all the time, and it's a full page in our book, Empower, that there is no instructional manual to do this work. There is no exact right way to do it. And that's actually good news. There's so many different ways to do project-based learning, performance tasks. Don't let anybody tell you it needs to be 6 weeks or 8 weeks, or it needs to be 2 days or 5 days or any of those types of things. There's so many different ways to do this work. You understand your students, you understand your community, you understand what they need to learn, the process. And the more you do this, you're going to get a feel for what is going to work with your kids in your class, in your room. I'm so excited you all joined me here today and learning from fabulous other presenters here. I love learning from them as well. Thanks so much, Cindy, and everybody for having me. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Wow, AJ, that was amazing. It's such an inspiring, informational presentation. We all are better for having heard you today. I didn't get any particular questions. Everybody was all excited and sharing, but you definitely can tell that you have a heart as big as the ocean, and you're all about educators. And you guys, he gave you his email, he gave you his website. AJ wants to help you, so continue the conversation with him. And if we get any other questions, AJ, we can send them to you. And then when we send the link out, they will get that. So if you're staying with us after this, guys, the next presentation starts in 8 minutes. So you may want to run to the bathroom, grab a cup of coffee, and come back to learn some more. So AJ, thank you so much. And I look forward to working with you in the future. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Go Sixers. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.